to have a law on blasphemy. We had a Defamation Act in 1961 covering libel slander with a section on blasphemy as well, which, by the way, had a prison sentence as well as a fine. We're replacing that Defamation Act. We're modernising the laws on libel and slander, which is the main focus of this legislation. But as part of that, because of the constitutional provision requiring a law on blasphemy, we have to replace Section 13 of the 1961 Act with one section in the 2009 Act about blasphemy.
Okay.
So it's only one section, it's not legislation, it's one section of legislation.
Okay, now we can debate till the cows come home whether or not we needed legislation to define blasphemy. But just to go back to me,
that's why we're doing it, though, Miriam, because of the constitutional obligation the government is doing it. It's
there's
nothing to do with
150 million things in that constitution we have an obligation to define,
Well,
and we haven't defined. I just want to ask you on the Minister Micheál Martin point, what is our government's policy? Is it what he said in relation to that UN vision, or is it what he said in our legislation now? Which is it?
The government, when Minister Ahern is bringing in this law, he has to comply with the Constitution. But he has also said that he is not against any referendum to take this out.
It's completely different. It's a completely different point of view.
If we want to remove blasphemy from our law, we have to have a referendum. And quite frankly, Minister Ahern, and I agree with him, doesn't want to have a referendum because of the costs associated with that with the Referendum Commission. Just let this lie. This is so broadly drafted, it's highly unlikely that anyone will suffer prosecution
Okay, Thomas
this.
Byrne, I'm conscious you've come in and the Minister isn't here. But what you're saying is there's one view we have when we're abroad about what we think of blasphemy, and there's a completely different view when we're at home.
Criminal law is a matter for each member state. That's a matter for us. We have to comply with the Constitution that we have there, and the Minister has no option but to comply with the Constitution. If he wasn't complying with the Constitution, he'd have him on here criticising.
Let me bring in Sejal Parma. She's a lawyer with Article 19, which is mainly a human rights group based in London. Sejal Parma, you think there are broader implications, don't you, in terms of countries like Pakistan looking at our legislation and approving of it?
Yes, my organisation thinks that besides the negative implications on freedom of expression within Ireland, there is also implications internationally. The Irish legislation provides illiberal regimes with a precedent, a justification for their own blasphemy laws and laws on defamation of religions, which are far-reaching. They have often very harsh sentences. And countries such as Egypt, Morocco, Saudi Arabia, Iran, all can look to Ireland as providing a precedent and demonstrating that the West too has protections on religious issues, on religious offence, to justify their own laws. And as the film indicated, groups of states, in particular at the UN, have used already the exact wording of the Irish blasphemy legislation to argue for defamation of religions as a principle to be protected under international human rights law. Now, international human rights law is about the protection of individuals, not ideas, and therefore we view this as a very negative step.
Let me bring in Ali Selim. We saw you there in Katie's film from the Islamic Cultural Centre in Hunskey. You obviously support this new law. But what would you say to people, Ali, who say we live in a pluralist society, we heard Philip above the moment, they're even joking about Jesus Christ. Christians laugh a lot at jokes about, say, their Lord. Maybe you need to relax.
Well, in fact, let me say to you, the fact that we feel we live in a pluralistic society makes us hail such a legislation, because it is basically provide a legal protection to mutual respect, which we perceive as the main foundation of multiculturalism and inclusivism. Just back to the point that our guest said over there, that if you have something here, that it might be used by other countries as a precedent, and then just no, they're all over the world. There are different aspects of legislations that are not copied here and there.
But I suppose, where does that, I'll let you be back in a moment, where does that stop, though, Ali Selim? In other words, when you look at the Danish cartoons, when you look at what happened to Salman Rushdie, isn't it dangerous to go down that road? Aren't you better just to let people not have a blasphemy law, like the British actually got rid of their blasphemy law last year, and just leave it as it is?
In fact, it works on the contrary of that, because when we have a legal protection, then people will start using legal actions. And just back to the point that you have mentioned, you see, when that Danish cartoon and what we have seen a minute ago, the violent expression of condemnation is very limited to areas where we have political tension. But if you look at a country like Ireland here, we issued a press release and we and we made a press conference because this is the area where we live and this is the culture of the place where we live.
I think it's very, very important to remember the Minister's motivation with this is to comply with the Constitution. In doing so, in this new legislation, which is, again, is defamation legislation, not specific to blasphemy, he has removed the prison sentence, he's reduced the penalty down, he has made the offence more broad, he's put in a defence to it as well.
Thomas, I hear you saying, but
Could
have
I
you
just
heard...
get in here?
We would have to have a referendum in Ireland to remove this from our statute books, to remove this from the Constitution.
But you have made that point. I'll let Sejal in. The bottom line, though, is, as Sejal says, there are many countries using our new legislation for their own ends. Does that not worry you?
But I think this piece of legislation also has implications for Ireland itself and the protection of human rights in Ireland, in particular free speech. It stands to exert a chilling effect on freedom of expression, and what Mr. Salim said assumes that religions are monolithic entities, and in fact there are dissenting voices within religions. So, you know, this blasphemy law supports a monolithic view of religion.
Let me say to you that such a legislation, we have to see it from a different angle. Like providing a protection is something legal, and everybody is entitled to that under the guns to these areas. And the experience. Let me finish this, please.
Believers, not religions or religious ideas.
We're talking about all religions. We're talking about all religions. Everybody, once you have a value, you're not imposing it on others, but you're entitled to hold this value sacred to you, and nobody should degrade that value, full stop, is that a reasonable request or not.
Okay, let me ask,
but at the same time,
Sejal, I'm just going to ask, when you speak like that, Ali, you're not saying what happened, obviously, in relation to the Danish cartoons, or what happened to Salman Rushdie is ever right, is it?
No, wait, what I said,
Would you consider that to be wrong?
No, I said what happened with regard to the Danish cartoon. The people expressed their outrage in different ways, but all these ways were related to the political tension or non-political tension of the area to which they are related. Just compare the Muslim reactions in all areas and not just to focus it on
and then
one
Thomas. Sejal, come back in there.
Our view is that this law is extremely archaic. It's archaic, but also restrictive of free speech in Ireland. Ireland is a multicultural society. The perception and reality as a result of this law is that Ireland is stepping back. Freedom of expression is, like freedom of religion, an essential human right. Freedom of religion does not protect religions per se. Human rights protect individuals. Okay. So, you know, if the answer is to protect individuals, then institute proper hate speech laws which protect individuals against incitement, discrimination, hostility and violence.
Okay, Sejal, I'm going to cut you across the
I will just make a quick point that this law doesn't apply to any one particular religion. And I also make the point that if the government were to decide that we're to hold a referendum on this and have a referendum commission, have all the costs associated with that, we would be criticised for wasting money because there have been no successful prosecutions under defamation law. It's unlikely there will be under this law. But maybe at some point in the future, a government will make a decision, and I would support that wholeheartedly. But I understand the position that the Minister is in. The Minister has to comply. The Minister has no option but to comply with our Constitution and with directions of the Supreme Court.
The government had a choice. The government could have had a referendum at the same time as the Lisbon Treaty referendum. They underestimated the intelligence of the Irish people, who could have easily dealt with another question.
They could have, yes, but we're not talking about the intelligence of the Irish people. We're talking about the cost of it. We would have had to have a separate referendum commission for that question, and that adds to the cost of things as well.
Okay, do you support
Oh no, I would rather remove it from the Constitution, don't get me wrong. I mean, what the Minister is doing is technical. He's replacing a law which puts a potential prison sentence on people with a law that removes that. But that's very important.
So with everything else we've been dealing with in the country, blasphemy seems to be the most important thing that needs to legislate.
One section of the Defamation Act.
Ali Salim, I know you wanted to come back in. I have to leave it there. Do you mind? I have to leave it there. Is that okay?
Say one sentence. I say we have to differentiate between freedom of expression and transgression.
Okay, Ali Salim, Thomas Byrne, Sejal Partha, thank you all very much for joining us tonight. That's all we have got time for you tonight. The next News in RTE is News in 2 at 27 minutes past 11. We're back at the same time on Thursday night when we report on the huge controversy